From WWL-TV, the spirit of Louisiana, this is Louisiana's news leader, Channel 4's Eyewitness Morning News.
The latest LEAP and graduate exit exam score showed some improvement in all Louisiana school districts, but more work lies ahead. In Jefferson Parish, the business community is joining forces with the school board to make resources available for schools. And here to explain are Rafe Rabelais of GCR and Associates and Ray Seaman, who is chairman of JEDCO. And thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
Well, I want to start with you, Rafe. If you could tell us a little bit about what you found in studying the Jefferson Parish school system.
Sure. Well, I think one of the most important things to emphasize is exactly what you touched on just right at the outset, is the fact that there have been tremendous strides that have been made. Really kind of the lens through which we're looking at the public schools is as Jefferson Parish, kind of as a component of the metropolitan whole. And what's driving this whole process and the reason why the business community is involved is because we realize that Jefferson Parish is essentially in competition with other parishes in the metropolitan area, with other communities throughout the United States for businesses and residents. And from that standpoint, if you look at the numbers historically, there has been a gap, an achievement gap between Jefferson Parish and some of the other school systems within the state that are especially high performing. And
notably St. Tammany Parish.
Sure. St. Tammany has historically performed very well, and some other school systems within the metropolitan area have historically performed higher. So that's driving this process, yet we have, of course, noticed gains recently, which is something to emphasize.
And Ray, a major emphasis of JEDCO is to try to lure middle-class families back into the public school system in Jefferson Parish.
No question about it, Sally. We, just as a preference to all of this, we embarked upon this whole study back in October of last year, and this is one segment of what we call Edge 2020, which is an initiative of JEDCO, and this is probably the third segment being education. I must admit, it was a wake-up call for me, not only being as chairman of JEDCO and a businessman, but also as a parent of private school system children. And you know, I was probably typical to the average parent that sends their children to private school and don't really pay a whole lot of attention to the public school system.
And that's a problem, isn't it?
It's a big problem. You know, I would see articles in the newspaper and I would just go right past them. That doesn't pertain to me. That's public school children. But when people read this new study, it's a buy-in from our Superintendent of Education in Jefferson Parish, Ms. Diane Roussel, our entire school board in Jefferson Parish, all the way up to our state superintendent, Paul Pasterick. And they all basically signed off on this document. And it tells the real story of what's happening to public education in Jefferson Parish and in the region, and the impact that it has, the negative impact when we don't educate our public school children.
You cannot ignore that, and you are addressing that. What are some of the key strategies for dealing with this?
Rafe, I'm going to turn that one over to you since you were the author.
Well, I think one real success story that Jefferson Parish has seen in the last several years is the introduction of academically themed schools and magnet schools in Jefferson Parish. They've succeeded in kind of drawing a broader array of families to the school system. For example, recent information suggests that about 40% of the students who were enrolled in the magnet schools in Jefferson were not historically enrolled in the public schools. So you're starting to see that increased buy-in, and they've seen improved test scores as well. So according to a very specific plan looking to expand those options, academically themed schools and magnet schools in Jefferson, another big piece is also looking at the facilities part of the equation, and certainly that's one piece of the puzzle. It's not all the pieces of the puzzle. But Jefferson Parish is an aging suburban parish. Really, most of the schools were built between 1950 and 1980. And when you look at the quality of the private school facilities, when you look at the quality of public school facilities in other parts of the metropolitan area, bringing those up to the same level of quality is certainly an important area of emphasis. Many other recommendations. One is also looking at the source of funding that the school system gets from the state. It's a program called the MFP program.
And it's $4,000 per student now that it's getting through the program, and you think it should be higher than that?
Well, Jefferson Parish, it's a very complicated formula, and it involves the amount that each local community collects from the millage. It also takes into account the socioeconomic profile of the student body. But basically, at the end of the day, Jefferson collects about 67% on a per pupil basis that St. Tammany Parish does, for example. So looking to do an audit of that system to perhaps equalize things a little bit more is also another priority.
If people want to look at the full report and know about this, because this does affect the future of Jefferson Parish,
absolutely.
How can they get a copy of your report?
It's available electronically on the JEDCO website, which is just jedco.org.
Okay.
And if you follow the link to the Jefferson Edge 2020 process to education, you can find a full copy of the report.
Well, thank you both very much for coming in, and thank you for the business community being so involved.
You're very welcome.